My name is Sydney.
And my name is Paige.
And you're listening to another episode of Book ReMarks.
We're going to jump right into our book recommendations for the week. So the book I'm going to be recommending is called, it's kind of got a long name, but it's called They Can't Kill Us All, The Story of the Struggle for Black Lives. And it's by a journalist named Wesley Lowery. He's a journalist for still the Washington Post, I believe. Mm-hmm. And kind of this story follows his journey when he was reporting for a lot of the unfortunate deaths and shootings of Black people in the States, particularly starting in Ferguson with the shooting and I believe death of like a young adult named Michael Brown, I believe. Okay. And kind of that's where his journey begins, and he takes you through his reporting and people that he's met and people that he's talked to and things that he sees. Yeah. And it's just a really eye-opening book. I've been really into nonfiction lately, and I think this was a really good kind of book for me to read at the time that I'm trying to read more nonfiction and like kind of just get different people's perspectives on the world and like what others go through. So if you're into nonfiction, and it's also, I guess I'm a little biased because it's a good book for a journalist to read, just because like I'm like, oh, that's cool how we interviewed like this. That's cool how we got like this piece of information or how we was able to go to this. So again, it's a really good book for honestly anyone to read because it's just really eye-opening, but even more so for a journalist because it just honestly kind of gave me some tips on what to do and what not to do. But overall, it was just a really good story. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
That sounds really interesting. So the book that I'm going to be recommending is a little bit on the lighter, fluffier kind of side. It's a fiction book. It's actually a series called the Selection Series, and it's kind of like The Bachelor, I want to say, but it's a lot more kind of in-depth than that. It's about this royal family. They're looking for a wife for their son, basically. Okay. So there's people like all over the land, and they're in different like what they call castes. So they're in like from, I want to say 1 to 8 or something like that. So 1 being like the royal family, and then going down in job rankings. Oh, okay. So like artists and like musicians would be probably like lower, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So it follows the journey of this one girl named America, and she does not want to be there at all, but she gets picked. So she's trying to make her way through this selection, but basically she's just in it for the money to help her family because she's in one of the lower castes. So it's a really interesting book. It's funny. It's got, like, humor and romance in it as well. And I don't know, it's just kind of like a good, feel-good book. But at the same time, there's also, like, conflict and, like, war happening at the same time. So it brings in that element of, like, kind of chaos into what would be just a basic, like, fiction book. Yeah. But, yeah, I believe it's by Kiera Cass, if I remember that correctly. Okay.
Once again, we'll list all the books below, so if you want to check them out more.
But yeah, that's my book. It's a really interesting book.
Yeah, with the cast, it kind of sounds like almost like the Hunger Games. Yeah, is it a little bit like that?
I would say not as like
heavy.
Yeah, not as like they all live in the same area, basically, not in different districts or anything.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
They're just kind of separated by, like, who's, like, a 6 and who's a 2 and stuff like that.
Yeah, so, okay.
Yeah.
So what has happened in the literary world recently? So we were just kind of discussing, and obviously the big one is the Scotiabank Giller Prize has been awarded. The Scotiabank Giller Prize has been awarded annually since 1994. So the first place winner takes home $100,000, and the remaining finalists each receives $10,000. And this year, towards the end of November, author Michael Redhill won the Giller Prize for his book Bellevue Square, I want to say. Yeah, I've never read the book, unfortunately. Probably will end up reading it sometime soon. But essentially, we'll, again, link the book below. But the book follows a woman who discovers she may have a double gang staying are in a Toronto neighborhood. So very Canadian, very appropriate if you're kind of local. We're a little further from Toronto, but if you're kind of local in that area, it would be very, I guess, eye-opening book. That word is recurring for me today. I feel, like I said, I haven't read it, but it sounds really interesting, and it won the Giller Prize, so it must be great, so you should definitely check that out.
So the second and last news item we're going to share did not take place in Canada or even in the States, but in Moscow, Russia. But while we were keeping up with book news this month and researching for this podcast, this piece caught our attention. So again, in late November in Moscow, more than 30,000 people came out to the annual international fair for high-quality fiction and nonfiction. So just in time for Christmas, from November 29th to December 3rd, people can read and buy books from a selection of thousands. The fair sells books from Canada, the U.S., and books in English from the U.K. So that's pretty cool.
I know. I wish that was closer, but obviously that would defeat it being in Russia.
Right, maybe a little.
But it sounds like such a cool event. I was looking at some of the pictures from past years online, and there's just so many people. I'm like,
that's crazy.
This is perfect. I want to be here.
Yeah.
Maybe one day.
Next year.
Yeah.
There are lots of up-and-coming events happening in the literary world, but the ones we're about to share with you are local to where we are, which is Hamilton, Ontario. So on December 9th, which is a Saturday, Tom Wilson, who is 3-time winning Juno artist, will be signing copies of his book. Now, it's a long title. It's called Beautiful Scars, Steeltown Secrets, Mohawk Skywalkers, and The Road Home. That was the full title.
We'll link it below.
Yeah. So he will be doing the signing at the chapters in Ancaster. So if you're a fellow Hamiltonian and you can appreciate the term Steeltown like we can, you'll definitely want to check that out. I know I do.
So this next event isn't an author that's coming to town or a book that's being released or an award list that's coming out. However, it's still very exciting, and I think it's right up both myself and Sydney's alley in terms of what we like to do for fun. So the Lily H. Smith Library in Toronto is hosting a free event on December 19th from 2 to 3 p.m. And basically what it is their librarians are going to be talking about some great books that they recommend, all while enjoying a cup of tea. And if the Moscow, Russia, book fair thing doesn't sound interesting to you, and this doesn't sound interesting to you, and you're into books, then I really don't know what will, because tea and books, I feel, just go hand in hand. So I think this is literally perfect. I really want to go.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun, which I know that sounds lame, but
I know.
Books are fun, tea is delicious.
Yes, and there's so many types of tea.
And so many types of books.
So, highs and lows. Sydney, what are your highs and lows for this week? We'll start off with you.
I think my low was probably being sick, not feeling well, We all have those days. It's not fun.
No, never is.
No. So, I had a couple of those days, but I got better during the week because, as you know, we went out filming for a documentary that we are filming with another one of our friends, and that was just quite the adventure.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
A lot of laughs.
A lot of chaos, but, we worked out in the end, so
yeah.
I think that's definitely my high. Yeah, how about you?
My high was my birthday, was on November 23rd, and I didn't really actually get up to too much on my actual birthday. I just kind of spent the day with my mom and my grandma. My grandma made me pudding. It was delicious. It was so good. Chocolate pudding. But then the weekend, I just kind of went out for dinner with my friends and just kind of celebrated. So yeah, that was definitely my high. I'm 21 years old now, which is a little concerning because I'm like, oh my God, I'm really not a teenager anymore.
No.
It's really real now. And then a more seasonal low for me, I feel, was not being done my Christmas shopping because I know once December hits, the mall is just going to be chaos for ever for the rest of the month of December. And I have gotten most of my shopping done, but there's just one or two things that I still need to pick up that I'm like, I don't really have time to.
Yeah.
But when I do have time to, it's going to be December, and then I don't want to go to the mall anymore, and it's going to be stressful. So, that's definitely my low.
You're way ahead of the game. Some people wait till the week before Christmas to even start their shopping, so I think you're pretty good.
Yeah, I am feeling more prepared this year, but I'm still dreading going to the mall in December.
Yep.
We're on to our last segment of this week's podcast, the book club. If you haven't been keeping up, or this is your first time listening to our podcast, we've been reading and talking about Milk and Honey by the author Rupi Kaur. Last month was our first time discussing it, and we discussed the section called The Hurting, and now we're discussing the section called The Loving. So if you want to listen to what we said about the first section, I would suggest going back and listening to that podcast, but if you have already read the book and you kind of know the sections and you just want to listen to this one, then just keep tuning in. So, Sydney, what did you think about this section?
It was quite different from the first section, obviously, from Hurting and Loving. They're very different things. But this one, I don't know. There was something about it. I really enjoyed this section. Just the way she used her words to describe certain things was just so well written and written in a way that I haven't seen before. So reading that was kind of very beautiful, I guess.
Yeah.
Like love is such a strong and in-depth topic to talk about, but her poems are so short and sweet that she packs a lot into such a short poem that it's mind-blowing how much she can write about in 4 lines.
Yeah.
So I really like this section. But what did you think?
Yeah, I think we were kind of discussing when we left off last podcast episode, we weren't sure what we were going to think about this section because we're what kind of loving, kind of judging from the first section, what is she going to be talking about? But right from the first poem of this section, she really gets the message across of what this section is going to be. And I really loved it, obviously. But I did find there was a few poems that I'm ooh, that what kind of loving is that? That kind of sounds a little bit different than judging from the first poem. But overall, like you said, beautifully written. Yeah. She packs a lot into every single poem, some of which are one line. Yeah. And you read it and you're just wow. How did someone write something so powerful in such a short amount of space?
Yeah, it's crazy.
But yeah, excellent section. I loved it. I can't wait to read the next one, which I believe is called The Breaking. I'm going to quickly check that right now. Yeah, it's called The Breaking. So I don't know what that's going to be like. It doesn't really sound too happy, but
I feel like she's taking us kind of on a roller coaster. When you start low and then you get high with the love, and then it could go right back down with the breaking. So
yeah,
that'll be interesting.
Yeah, so we'll see, but overall, I think the consensus for the both of us is that we really liked this section, as we did with the first and probably the others. There was so much hype about this book. It's really, really not that hard to start reading it with a positive mindset that you're going to like this book.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Book ReMarks. If you want to catch up on our past 2 episodes, we'll link them in the description along with everything else we kind of reference. And also, if you want to be notified when we post new episodes, you can hit the subscribe button and click the bell to turn on our notifications.
I've been Sydney.
And I've been Paige.